The sports car sitting in my parents' driveway didn't belong to me, but somehow it felt like something had been ripped right out of my hands. Chloe danced around it like she'd just conquered the world, laughing, glowing like everything she ever wanted had been handed to her. And in a way, it had, just not by her own hard work. I sat frozen behind the wheel of my modest Honda, still wearing the same heels I'd been in since 7 a.m. after a brutal 12-hour day at the firm. My phone buzzed again, probably another warning from the bank that my savings had dipped below the minimum. I already knew the truth, deep down. The numbers weren't lying. Chloe hadn't just bought a car, she'd stolen my future. My name is Emma, and what you're about to hear is the story of how I found out that the people closest to me weren't just taking me for granted, plus, they were actively stealing from me. This isn't about a car. This is about betrayal, dressed up as family. Chloe, I asked, my voice low but tight, where did you get the money for this? She flipped her hair like it was all just a joke, grinning as if she hadn't just stolen everything I'd worked years to build. Relax, she said. Mom and Dad helped. It's fine. Behind her, our parents stood with champagne, smiling like it was some kind of celebration. Your sister needed a car, Mama offered, trying to sound reasonable. We used that emergency fund you set up. My stomach dropped. That fund wasn't for flat tires or a broken fridge, it was my house down payment. 50 grand. Gone. Chloe waved it off like I was being overdramatic. You'll save it again. You're good with money, it's what you do. And family comes first, right? That line hit like a slap. I showed her my phone screen. $127.43. That's all that was left. No warning. No permission. This betrayal, packaged in entitlement. Dad cleared his throat, probably gearing up to justify it. But I was already burning. Emma, your sister has interviews coming up, Dad said, like that explained everything. She needs to make the right impression. I laughed, sharp, bitter. Interviews? For which job? The one she bailed on or the degree she never finished? Chloe's eyes filled with tears right on cue, playing the victim like she always did. Mom, she's being mean, she whimpered. And of course, Mom jumped in, wrapping an arm around her. Emma, please, she said, tone trembling like I was the one causing harm. Your sister's been struggling. We just need to support her right now. You've always been the strong one. That phrase hit like a weight I'd carried too long. The strong one. The dependable one. The one who covered late bills, ran damage control, sacrificed dreams. Since I was 12, I'd been their fixer, making breakfast while Mom slept off wine headaches, tying Chloe's shoes, soothing tantrums. Now they expected me to hand over my future too, and call it love. You're right, I said, calm but firm, pulling out my phone. I am the strong one. Mom's face lit up, too fast, too relieved. See, I knew you'd understand. But I wasn't finished. I'm also the one whose name is on every financial account you've leaned on for years. The one who covered Dad's credit card debt. The one whose savings you drained for Chloe's car. I pressed dial. Yes, this is Emma Lawson. I need to close account 847,392, effective immediately. Yes, I understand that will freeze all linked cards. That's the point. Dad's glass hovered midair. Mom lunged, but I stepped back. You can't do this, she cried. Actually, I can, and I am. I looked Chloe straight in the eyes. Enjoy the car, sis. Hope it was worth everything. She screamed after me. You're just jealous. Mom and Dad love me more. I paused, hand on my car door, then smiled. You know what's funny about karma? It doesn't always wait. Give it 72 hours, you'll see. And as I drove away, Dad fumbled with his phone while Mom cradled Chloe like she was the victim. But for the first time, I wasn't the one left broken. I was finally the one in control. They looked just like that framed portrait in the hallway, Mom and Dad on either side of Chloe, beaming like they raised a legacy instead of a liability. I paid for that picture, like I paid for their bills, her tuition, everything. But that ended tonight. I pulled over, hands trembling, and called Lucas. You once told me to stop enabling them, I said, my voice raw. Well, I finally did. His reply was instant. Good. Meet me. Bring the truth. I'll bring the laptop. Behind me, their perfect world still sparkled in the fading sun. But this time, I wasn't part of the frame. They say revenge is best served cold, but honestly, I was on fire. At the bar, Lucas slid his laptop toward me. 3 days, he said. That's when everything collapses. The credit cards, the loans, all of it. I swirled my drink, the ice like tiny echoes of my anger. My phone had been buzzing nonstop, 17 missed calls, texts, begging for mercy. Your sister is sick with guilt. We raised you better. Did they? I remembered being 13, helping Dad balance a checkbook he couldn't read, sacrificing college because Chloe needed braces. Lucas clicked through screen after screen. Emma, they've been skimming from your linked accounts for years. Not thousands, hundreds of thousands. Tiny transactions just small enough to slip under the radar. I stared at the numbers building on the screen, a quiet storm of betrayal. Another buzz. Mom's face. "You should answer," Lucas said, eyes hard. "Time they hear from the version of you they didn't see coming." The moment I answered the phone, I could hear the panic bubbling beneath Mom's voice. "Emma, the bank called. Everything's frozen. Credit lines, accounts." "What did you do?" she demanded, as if I were the one who broke the rules. I stayed calm. Exactly what I said I'd do. I closed my accounts. She launched into excuses, her tone growing shrill. "But your father's cards aren't working. We have bills to pay." "Chloe," I cut her off. "What about me, Mom? What about the house I'd been saving for since I was 23? She tried to guilt me, saying, "That's different. We're family. Family doesn't steal." But that was the lie I'd believed for too long. I reminded her that I'd seen the credit reports, that I was still listed as an authorized user on 6 maxed-out cards. Cards I'd been unknowingly covering for years. She went quiet. Then came the final plea. "Please, just come over." I agreed, but not to fix things, only to face them. When I walked into that living room, it felt like a stage set for denial. Chloe's smeared mascara, Dad's frantic pacing, the air thick with dread. "The bank's calling in everything by Friday," Dad muttered. I sat calmly, folded my hands, and said, "That would be my savings account. They're clawing back, the one Chloe stole. Chloe lost it. They might take my car," she wailed. I met her eyes. Almost as embarrassing as explaining to my realtor why my house deposit vanished, my tone was steady, but inside I felt a storm rising, and this time, it wasn't mine to carry. They looked stunned, like the truth had never actually occurred to them. I stared at the family I once bent over backward to support and finally saw them for what they were, comfortable in my sacrifices, blind to my boundaries. "You've treated me like a personal ATM," I said, my voice steady, sharper than it had ever been. "And now that it's empty, you're scrambling." Mom cried, talking about Dad's early retirement and how tight things had been. But I wasn't buying it anymore. "You mean the retirement I warned him not to take? The one with no backup plan?" Dad started to speak, but I cut him off. "No, you don't get to lecture me after using me." Chloe tried to play innocent, insisting I could just save it all up again. I looked her dead in the eye. "You're right, I can. But I won't be saving it for you." I headed to the door, saying what needed to be said. "I'm cutting you all off, permanently." Mom reached for my arm. "We're your parents." I pulled away gently. "Then act like it. Parents protect their children. They don't steal from them to spoil another." I opened the door without looking back. "Chloe, you might want to keep that car close. Repo guys don't knock twice." Then I closed the door on them softly, finally, completely. I watched the video with a strange mix of satisfaction and grief. Chloe screaming at the repo guys, Mom trying to block the tow truck, Dad waving useless paperwork. It wasn't justice exactly, but it was consequence. For years they played the victims while bleeding me dry. Now, they were learning what it felt like to lose something they thought they were entitled to. "You okay?" Mia asked, handing me a coffee. "Not yet," I said, eyes still on the screen. "But this is a start." I took a slow sip. For the first time, I'm not cleaning up their mess. I'm just watching them sit in it. The proof was all there, every forged signature, every unauthorized loan, every lie dressed up as a family emergency. As I scrolled through the documents, it didn't feel like revenge anymore, it felt like justice. Chloe had screamed at the repo men, but what she was really afraid of was losing the illusion of invincibility. And Mom trying to shield that's criminal. And this time, I wasn't going to clean it up, I was going to press charges. The intercom had barely gone silent before it buzzed again, longer, louder, more frantic. I could hear Chloe's whiny voice blending into Mom's shrill desperation. It was chaos layered in guilt and manipulation, and it had gone on long enough. Mia grabbed her purse, ready to call the cops, but I stopped her. I needed to face them not for them, but for me. When I opened the lobby doors, Chloe's smeared mascara and clenched fists were the picture of a crumbling facade. She demanded to know what I'd done, as if freezing accounts and facing fraud charges were accidents, not consequences. And Mom, right behind her, still clung to the narrative that this was all a misunderstanding. But when I reminded them of the years they used me, my money, my credit, my silence, they had no answers, only deflection. Chloe tried spinning it into jealousy. Mom reached for sympathy. But I stood firm. Every time they borrowed from me, every time they made excuses, they were testing how far they could push me, and now they knew I'd reached my limit. And I wasn't breaking, not this time. Chloe's voice cracked as she pleaded, "But you're my sister. You're supposed to protect me." I didn't flinch. "I did protect you for 29 years. I shielded you from every consequence, paid for your mistakes, held this family together while you tore it apart. That ends today." As the police car pulled up and Mia calmly pointed them out for harassment, I felt the weight of the years lift. Mom's face drained of color. Emma, you wouldn't. I would, I said without hesitation, turning back toward the building. And if you show up again, it becomes part of the identity theft case I file tomorrow. The officer didn't miss a beat. Ma'am, step away from the premises. Watching them escorted to the car through the lobby window, Chloe's eyes met mine, full of panic, like she finally realized this was real. Mom never looked back. For the first time, the boundary wasn't just spoken, it was enforced. Upstairs, Lucas and Mia were waiting, faces tight, coffee cold, and a tension in the air that said we weren't done yet. They're gone, I exhaled, sinking into the couch. Not for good, but enough to breathe. Mia gave a tight smile. You know what the best revenge is? I expected her to say peace or freedom, but she leaned in with a glint in her eye. That dream house. Bigger. Better. Lucas turned his laptop toward me, screen glowing with a spreadsheet that made my stomach drop. You need to see this, he said, pointing to a pattern, small, regular transfers from my account to one I'd never seen. It's been happening for 3 years. They used that old joint account from college. My blood went cold. Then came the worst part. $300,000, 0 cents. All of it siphoned slowly into Chloe's lifestyle, your parents' debts. I gripped the counter to stay upright. They didn't just take from you, Emma, he said softly. They built a life on your name. Then Mia burst in with property records, another forged signature, another betrayal. They used your name to refinance their condo last week. My breath caught. They're drowning, Lucas said, and they're using you as the life raft. The call from Nathan hit like a second betrayal. At midnight, my boss's voice was heavy. Emma, your sister applied for a job here, said you'd vouch for her finance degree and 3 years of experience. I felt something break. She dropped out after 1 semester. 20 minutes later, I was off the phone and granted time off to file police reports. But it didn't stop there. Lucas swiveled his laptop toward me. Chloe's high school tuition? You paid it. Your parents listed you as guarantor. Automatic withdrawals. 6 years. The room fell silent. Then Mia scoffed. They said that account was for emergencies. The emergency was their lifestyle. Rage and clarity arrived together. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was years of systemic theft hidden behind the word family. The moment my phone buzzed with Mom's group text, "Your father's in the ER," I felt the old guilt creeping in like smoke through a cracked door. Mia snatched the phone. "They're baiting you." I nodded, but my heart still clenched. Chloe's message followed. "If anything happens to Dad, it's your fault." I didn't flinch. I typed back, "If anything happens to Dad, it's because of the choices you all made, and those choices come with consequences." My eyes moved to the stack of evidence on the table. Forged documents, fake signatures, a paper trail of betrayal, years in the making. Mia asked gently, "What now?" I didn't hesitate. "I'm calling the police, and then I'm calling every single bank they dragged my name through, because this time I wasn't cleaning up after them, I was cleaning them out." The police station felt colder than I expected, every light too bright, every surface too sharp. Detective Martinez flipped through the mountain of evidence I handed over, each forged signature a scar I'd carried in silence. "This is serious," she said. "Once we file, there's no going back." But I didn't flinch. My voice was steady. "Yes, I want to proceed." My phone buzzed with another guilt-laced message from Chloe, more blame, more manipulation. I showed it to the detective without a word. She nodded, as if she'd seen this story before. "Family financial abuse isn't rare," she said gently. Then the door opened, and in came Nathan, my boss, holding a manila folder like a weapon. "She didn't just defraud banks," he said, laying out more documents. "She used your name to fake her entire career. Page after page, lie after lie." I realized I wasn't just pressing charges, I was taking my life back, one truth at a time. The moment Detective Martinez's pen picked up speed, I knew the weight of what I'd carried alone for years was finally being taken seriously. "We're looking at multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse," she said. And then my phone rang. "Mom." Martinez gave a slight nod. I hit speaker. "Emma, the bank says your father could be charged." Mom's voice trembled. "Loan fraud?" I kept my voice steady. "I can't help you anymore." Her tone flipped, trying to guilt me. "After everything we've done for you?" I let out a dry laugh. "You mean the years you stole from me, lied to me, used me like a bank account with a heartbeat?" She started again, softer now, pleading. "We didn't mean to hurt you. You're so good with money. We needed help." Martinez cut in firmly. "This is Detective Martinez with the Financial Crimes Unit. I advise you to contact legal counsel immediately." The call ended in stunned silence. "We'll move fast," the detective said. "With this much evidence, arrest warrants should be issued by morning." My stomach turned. "They're really going to be arrested?" Nathan nodded. "This is felony fraud. It's not just financial, it's criminal. My phone buzzed again. Chloe this time. A string of angry texts, accusations, a childhood photo weaponized with guilt. "Remember when you were a good sister?" the caption read. I showed Martinez. "This is what they do. Guilt trips wrapped in old photos." She nodded. "Classic abuse. Do you want to press charges for harassment too?" I took a breath, then answered louder than I expected. "Yes, I do." The morning light felt unreal as I stepped outside the station, like the world kept turning even though mine had cracked open. Nathan's words still echoed. "You're doing the right thing," and I knew he was right. But knowing doesn't make it easier. Detective Martinez's voice followed me to the door, reminding me to save every message, every call, every guilt-laced attempt they'd surely make. "They won't stop," she said, "not until they're legally forced to." I nodded, took her card and left. Then came the final text, my father's number flashing one last time. "The police are here. How could you do this to your own parents?" My fingers didn't hesitate. "The same way you did it to your own daughter." One signature at a time. Then I blocked them, Mom, Dad, and Chloe. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. Because moving forward sometimes means cutting the cord completely, especially when it's been draining you for years. The headline hit like a punch, but not because it wasn't true. It was. They had been arrested. The fraud was real. But now came the spin, the twisted narratives. Mia dropped the paper on my desk like it was evidence in a trial. And in many ways it was. My mother had already gone on record, calling me unstable, trying to paint me as some vindictive daughter who couldn't tell loyalty from delusion. Lucas called it what it was: narcissism in damage control mode. But the public didn't know that. They just saw another messy family scandal. Then came the call from Aunt Laura, dripping with guilt tripping and outrage. "You ruined Chloe's life," she said, as if Chloe hadn't ruined mine first. But I stayed calm. I reminded her, and the growing pile of relatives like her, that I had the receipts, literal ones, and I wasn't afraid to show them. When I mentioned the debt they put in her name, the line went silent. That silence said more than any apology ever could. Mia grinned beside me. Boom. But I didn't smile. I was too tired of being the villain in their fiction, when all I did was finally stop being the victim. The manipulation never really stopped, it just changed form. One minute it was guilt texts, the next it was social media theatrics. Chloe's latest post was the cherry on top, a sob story about her jealous sister tearing the family apart, and a GoFundMe link begging for legal funds. But behind the crocodile tears was a full-blown scam. Detective Martinez flagged it first, and Lucas wasted no time collecting receipts and forwarding them to the prosecutor. Meanwhile, I barely had time to breathe before Nathan called me into his office with new evidence. Chloe had tried to open more credit cards, even impersonating a junior analyst at our firm to land a job with a competitor, again using my name. That wasn't just desperate, it was reckless. And yet, somehow it pushed something good to the surface. Nathan told me the board was impressed with how I'd handled everything with grace, clarity, and spine. They offered me a promotion to senior risk analyst. When I told Mia and Lucas, they practically threw a party on the spot. But just as I was savoring that small victory, another blow landed. An email from my parents' lawyer. They wanted me to write a letter to the judge asking for leniency. Lucas said, "Delete it." I didn't. I responded, calm, clear, and direct. I laid it all out, the years of theft, the forged signatures, the constant gaslighting, and their performative remorse. No more protecting them. No more silence. I wasn't being cruel, I was being honest. For the first time in my life, I was choosing me. The text from Detective Martinez hit like a final nail. Foreclosure. My parents' house, the place that once felt like home, filled with birthday candles and forced holiday smiles, was gone. Eviction was scheduled for next week. Lucas asked if I was okay, and I told him the truth. Not yet. But I would be. Because for the first time, they were facing actual consequences, not just awkward silences or guilt trips. Real, legal, irreversible consequences. The roles had reversed. I used to be the boring one, the responsible one, the one who smoothed things over while everyone else got to be reckless. Now, I had the promotion, the clean name, the peace of mind. They had foreclosure notices. I turned back to work, with Mia at my side, browsing listings for a house that would be fully mine. But nothing could have prepared me for what came next. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined, but the air was heavy with tension. My parents sat stiffly at the defense table, visibly aged, stripped of all bravado. Chloe sat behind them, arms crossed, eyes full of blame. The bailiff's call made it official. This was no longer a family matter, it was justice. When Detective Martinez squeezed my hand and asked if I was ready, I nodded. My fingers wrapped around the statement I'd rewritten a dozen times, but still carried like a live wire. The judge began reading the case title, but was cut off by a hushed commotion. Their lawyer, red-faced, whispered something, and within seconds, everything shifted. They were pleading guilty. No trial, no excuses, no performance. Chloe gasped in disbelief, but my parents simply wilted under the weight of it. The judge looked over his glasses, reminding them what this meant. No defense, no mitigation. They agreed, barely speaking above a whisper. And then it was my turn. I walked toward the podium, heels clicking against the cold courtroom tile, each step echoing louder than any of their apologies ever had. This was my moment, not for revenge, but for truth. For the years they buried my worth under obligation. For the girl who made excuses for grown adults. For the woman who finally said, "Enough." "Your Honor," I began, voice steady even as my fingers trembled around the statement I'd spent nights rewriting. "I came here today to talk about more than just money. Because what they took from me wasn't just financial. It was trust, security, and years of emotional labor I didn't even realize I was giving until it was gone." I glanced at my mother, already in tears, but I didn't stop. You can add up the stolen money, the forged documents, the loans I never agreed to, but how do you measure the weight of realizing your own family saw you not as a daughter or a sister but as a resource, a bank account in human form? I looked directly at them. Every time they said, "We love you," it came with a silent asterisk, "as long as you keep paying." Chloe shot up from her seat, yelling, "That's not true," but the judge shut her down, and I kept going. They taught me that family meant sacrifice, but only mine, that love was one-sided, and that protecting them meant letting them destroy my boundaries. But that ends today. I'm here to draw a line, not out of hate, but because I finally love myself enough to say no. My mom whispered, "We can still fix this," like it was a broken plate, not a decade of betrayal. I shook my head. "You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught." Then my father tried to claim it was all for Chloe. I turned to him and asked quietly, "Which daughter were you protecting, the one you used or the one you gave everything to?" The courtroom held its breath, the gavel slammed, and in that moment, justice finally spoke louder than their guilt. I nodded, eyes still fixed on the mirror. Yeah, I am now. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was dragging dead weight behind me. No more financial sinkholes disguised as family emergencies. No more guilt-tripping voicemails or midnight texts begging for one more bailout. Just silence. Peace. Freedom. The road ahead felt wide open, like I could finally breathe without permission. "You know," I added, turning to Lucas with a half-smile, "I always thought moving on meant walking away quietly. Turns out sometimes it means walking through fire and coming out stronger on the other side." He smiled back. "So, what's next?" I pulled up the email from my realtor again. Keys get handed over at 3 p.m. I've got a moving truck scheduled, a new chapter waiting, and hopefully a kitchen that doesn't remind me of every lie I ever swallowed at the dinner table. Mia leaned forward from the back seat. "And friends who actually know what loyalty looks like." I laughed. A real one this time. Exactly. No more stolen savings. No more stolen peace. Just me, my house, and the life I'm going to build from here on my own terms. As the courthouse disappeared behind us, I felt the weight lift fully. I wasn't just driving away from a courtroom. I was driving into the life they'd told me I'd never have without them. And guess what? I was finally free. I nodded and silenced the screen, slipping the phone face down on the counter. For once, I didn't feel the need to look back. Not out of avoidance, but because there was finally something ahead of me worth looking forward to. Lucas popped the champagne, the cork ricocheting off the ceiling as we all laughed. Mia handed me a glass. "To freedom," she said. "To peace," Lucas added. I raised mine last. "To me," I said, softly, with a smile that reached all the way through my chest. To the girl who finally stopped apologizing for choosing herself. We clinked glasses, and I let the quiet joy soak in. The kind of joy that doesn't shout but settles deep. A new house, a new chapter, and a new definition of family. The kind you build, not the kind you're born into. As the sun dipped behind my backyard fence, I realized something beautiful. My story didn't end with betrayal. It began with choosing better. For the first time ever, I wasn't just surviving, I was home. Detective Martinez set the folder on my kitchen counter and nodded. "That's probably the healthiest response I've heard all week." I looked around at the walls, still bare, the furniture still wrapped in plastic, and yet, for the first time, it felt like peace. Not the kind that comes from quiet, but the kind that comes from boundaries finally held. "Let them talk," I said, pulling out dishes and placing them where they belong. "Let them twist the story however they want. Truth doesn't need to shout to be real." Mia poured another round of champagne, this time without the theatrics. Lucas raised his glass. "To final chapters," he said. I clinked mine against his. "To new beginnings." I opened the last box tucked in the corner, labeled in fading marker. "Emma's. Keep." Inside was a photo of me as a kid, smiling, free, untouched by the damage that would come. I set it on the mantle not out of nostalgia but as a reminder that girl survived. This woman chose herself. And this house? This life? It was hers now. No more apologies, no more guilt, just peace, finally. Nathan raised his glass to lessons learned the hard way. Mia clinked hers against his. And to Emma, for turning pain into power. I smiled, truly this time, the kind that comes from knowing you didn't just survive something, you rose from it. The walls of my new home didn't echo with guilt or resentment. They echoed with laughter, freedom, and choice. I'd spent years thinking I owed my family everything, when really, I owed myself the chance to start fresh, and now I had it. A new home, a new title, a platform to help others, and people in my life who saw me not as a bank account, not as backup, but as Emma. Whole, worthy, free. The sun dipped lower outside the window, casting a golden hue across my countertops, as if sealing the chapter with light. I sipped my wine slowly, letting it settle, like peace spreading through my bones. No more double-checking credit reports. No more watching my back or second-guessing love disguised as obligation. Just this quiet, simple freedom. The kind I used to dream about when I was the girl cleaning up her family's messes. You know, I said, setting my glass down, I used to think freedom meant running away. Now I know it means standing still, owning your space, breathing easy. Lucas nodded, and trusting yourself again. I smiled. That was it. Trust. Not in them, in me. I had built this life, brick by brick, choice by choice, after years of theft, silence, and sacrifice. And now? I didn't owe anyone an apology for choosing joy. I had finally learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and moving on doesn't mean carrying people with you who never chose to stay on your side. So yes, this was my story now, a story about rising, about reclaiming, about rewriting the ending. And it was only just beginning. Sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is say enough, especially when it's to the people who raised you. But Emma's story shows us that love without respect isn't love at all. Setting boundaries doesn't make you the villain, it makes you the author of your own life. If this story hit home for you, if you've ever felt trapped between loyalty and self-worth, you're not alone. And you don't have to stay silent. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because, here, we tell real stories that matter. Watch more episodes that remind you it's okay to choose peace over pleasing everyone. And hey, drop a comment if you've ever had to walk away from a toxic family tie. Your courage might help someone else find theirs. This isn't just a video. It's your permission to choose yourself every single time.